Welcome back. Now let's continue with our analysis of the presidential election, how it played out. This time we'll be looking at the South-South geopolitical zone. Dio, this is one geopolitical zone that people really talked about, how this election was going to play out in that geopolitical zone. Of course, you know the reason why, because of the drama in Rivers State. The question before the election was who would take Rivers State. And are you surprised that at the end of it, that the APC candidate took it, getting 231,591 votes, and the Labour Party candidate coming second there, but the PDP performing dismally there. And the PDP had always won that state.
Well, it goes to show the relevance of Governor Wike and his absolute influence in that area. He had avowed before the elections that none of his people, neither him nor any of his supporters, indeed none of the people of Rivers, would vote for the presidential candidate of the PDP, simply because of the loggerheads that he and Atiku Abubakar were over the notion of your chair, Ayu, the chairman of the PDP. Wike had insisted that president, the chairman of the party, should either resign or be removed because he didn't agree with the notion that the presidential candidate and the party chairman should come from the same zone. He stuck to his guns, and he made it clear right from the beginning that he was going to scuttle the presidential potential of Wike in Rivers State, and he made it happen. The thing that really was a bit of a shocker was that the assumption was that voters are not sophisticated enough to begin to cherry pick the ballot papers and choose one logo for presidential and then choose a different one for Senate, a different one for House of Representatives. The thought of that convoluted process creating all kinds of confusion led a lot of people to believe that ultimately this die-hard PDP in the genetic makeup of the people of Rivers would carry the day. But it didn't happen that way. The other big shocker was the fact that Delta didn't go to the PDP. Delta went to the Labour Party, despite the fact that the Delta State Governor, Okowa, is the running mate of the PDP presidential candidate. That was a shocker. A big shocker, probably even a bigger shocker than the fact that Wike had his way in Rivers and Rivers went to the opposition.
Nelson, you look at the result. Edo State, for instance, the APC was the governing party in that state just a few years ago, but surprisingly in Edo State, the APC didn't do well at all.
Well, like we have come to realize, the sentiments in the southeast and South-South is such that the religion card played, a high degree of determining where the pendulum swung. And also, you look at the fact that there is this issue about the G5 governors. It must have resonated, to that region, and that is why you can see that in a state like Delta, as well as Edo, it was the LP that carried the day. Don't forget that the religious card, showed its potent, force in this election, where you had states that ordinarily are, conservative PDP states, going full weight with the LP candidate because, of the religious, factor. So you cannot run away from it. And also the G5, crisis can also not be divorced, from the way the result has panned out.
Liberals, let's talk about Akwa Ibom State. In Akwa Ibom State, we know that the APC now got 160,620 votes, and the PDP won it, of course, getting 214,012 votes. But the Labour Party coming third with 132,683 votes. Are you surprised? Because a lot of people had expected the Labour Party was going to take Akwa Ibom State.
I'm not surprised at the result. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not surprised at the result of Akwa Ibom, the way it went. You had, strong contending forces in a balance of forces, electoral forces in Akwa Ibom. I have been there. I've handled election petition in that state. You have the Udom factor, who is the current governor. You also have the Akpabio factor, who also had a shot at the presidential primaries before he stepped down for Bola Tinubu. And then you have also a large chunk of Igbos who are also traders in Uyo, and they border, this state border the eastern state. And then you have people there, like Nelson said, you have people who are Christians who also believe that, you know, this Christian, Muslim ticket of the APC is a no-no for them. Then lastly, the young people. You have a lot of young people, young educated people in Akwa Ibom that you also cannot rule out. So all of these are a mixed bag, and that is why you saw them sharing vote. But quickly, permit me to go to Edo and Delta that you had talked about before. Edo, for example, the state, the governor who left APC to PDP, and he's not had a good run in PDP. The PDP currently in Edo is a house divided against itself, certainly, and you have a lot of young people too, who participated heavily in the NSAS protest. Apart from the Christian and Muslim sentiment, you have a lot of young people who participated outside of Lagos. The next place where the NSAS movement, apart from Abuja, was highly successful was in Benin, Oredo. That's why you saw them, you know, the strong show. That's the largest zone, and Labour completely swept that place. For Okowa, it was like a scorecard for him, because most of the people in Delta State, apart from the fact that he had a faction, a quarrel with the Bori faction in PDP, that's a house divided against itself also, it was a scorecard for him, because the Warri Aziz have not been happy with him, that they said most of his good work did not extend to that. I will leave the floor for Evans, who is from that state, because he also had consistently been at loggerhead with the Okowa faction. And I know he should be very happy with the result from his state.
Yes, and let me quickly go to Evans now. Evans, you look at the way it played out in your state, Delta State. You know, for the vice presidential candidate of the PDP to lose Delta State, which is traditionally a PDP state, what exactly do you make of the outcome of the election in that state?
The youths of Delta State took a resolve to ensure that they make a very strong statement to the governor of Delta State, who incidentally is also the running mate to the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar. Now, the Labour Party, you know, was able to usurp the votes by virtue of the fact that the PDP have been tried in Delta State, tested in Delta State, and they have failed woefully. At the presidential level too, Delta State the citizens don't really trust APC, okay, to that effect, because the influx of APC and PDP members is one and the same. It's just the same difference. So they went for a new voice, the Labour Party. Not only did the Labour Party win the seats, if you look at the other areas, like someone like Elumelu lost his seat to Labour Party, and the Labour Party also made huge strides in so many areas in the state. And when you look at it, you discover that these are actually votes that represent popular mandates of the people. There were some hitches here and there, which is a regular thing in the Nigerian election, but the truth is that Deltans are tired of Okowa and his likes. They have impoverished the people. They have not been able to deliver good governance. Every corner you go to in Delta State, you are greeted with poverty. So this is the people's revolt, and this is how it should be. People should be able to, at some point in human history, you know, revolt against the behemoth, the devilish conduct of subsisting government that will never deliver on the promise of democracy. Delta State is rich in oil, but when you go there, if you see what PDP have done to that state, it used to be a PDP-grounded state.
No problem.
Of course, Okowa shouldn't have.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you. I can understand how you. I can understand your issues with the Delta State government, but we'll discuss that some other time. Let's quickly move on to the next geopolitical zone now, the North Central. Now, Dayo. The way I see it, this election was won and lost in the north of the country. Somehow that's the way I see it, because you look at the votes that the APC candidate was able to garner in the north and compare that to the votes that the Labour Party candidate, for instance, was able to get. The Labour Party candidate obviously didn't do well in the north. But then the APC candidate was able to give Atiku Abubakar a run for his money in the north. And that's the reason why he is the president-elect of the country today. So let's take a look at North Central. Of course, before now, a lot of analysts had projected Peter Obi of the Labour Party was going to do well in the North Central. Not all of the North Central anyway, but you look at the results now, the way it turned out. Tell me what your take is.
Well, first of all, the thing that strikes me from the North Central is that we have to give recognition to the fact that Bola Ahmed Tinubu actually worked very hard. He really campaigned hard in those places. He had alliances. I mean, for example, the Kogi State governor worked on his behalf. So many elements aligned in his favor, primarily because of the passion with which he brought to the campaign, especially in the north. He devoted quite a lot of time to campaigning and spreading his message in the northern part of the country. He also formed the right kind of alliances with the with the APC governors in that region, to where they all went out to try and sell his candidacy. So ethnicity was relegated to the background in the North Central. You look at Plateau, you look at Niger, you look at even Nasarawa, even though he lost there, he had a very good showing. Kwara was expected. That typically has always, after the advent of the Sarakis, Kwara has always pretty much been an APC state. They've got a strong governor there now who went out to work for Bola Tinubu's candidacy, same as Kogi. Benue was quite a bit of a surprise, actually. I guess that's because Samuel Ortom had openly endorsed Peter Obi and the Labour Party. But when you consider the fact that Ortom...
But then the APC won it.
Yes, APC won it, so that was a surprise. But then, to show the consistency, Ortom now lost his own senatorial bid. So that goes to show that his influence and his assistance in pulling up Peter Obi, while it had some impact, it wasn't adequate enough to get Obi over the top. And APC won it by a hair's breadth of about 2,000 votes.
And that was really a big deal, isn't it, Nelson? It must have been a very big deal that the APC could win Benue State, because it made a lot of difference in the overall results. What do you think?
Well, I think with regards to Benue, don't forget that the APC candidate is a Reverend Father. So that must have been used, or that must have sunk into the consciousness of the people who wouldn't have bought into the idea of the APC ticket, or the blackmail of the APC as an Islamic, agenda-driven party. Then you look at Abuja. It was expected that the LP, would sweep the polls there. Other states where you have a strong showing of the APC, like Kwara and Kogi, everyone knew that that would have been a no-go area for the LP or the PDP because of the strength of the PDP in those states. But in Nasarawa State, I think, looking at the figure, was it won by the LP?
Yes, it was won by the LP.
Ah, yeah. And Niger, Plateau, the reasons that can be adduced for that, you cannot divorce it from the religious, sentiment.
No, the APC won Niger. I mean,
by
far.
The LP won Plateau.
Yes,
even
the LP
though
won
it's
Plateau.
an APC controlled state. Then you can see that the PDP also had a strong showing, which tells you clearly that it was more about party loyalty, ethnic sentiments, and religious. These are primordial sentiments that has always held back us as a people. Then you look at Nasarawa. You look at despite the fact that the Well, the APC national chairman is from Nasarawa State, but that didn't stop, the LP from clinching victory there. It tells you clearly that, there were some other forces, beyond the competence of the candidates, that came to play there.
Okay. Now, Libros, just look, I want you to concentrate now on the results of Atiku Abubakar of the PDP now in the north central of the country. You look at his entire results. He basically came second in he didn't do well in the north central. We must tell ourselves the truth. In Plateau State, for instance, he came third. In Niger State, he came second. In Nasarawa State, he came third. In Kwara State, he came second there. And in Kogi State, he came second as well. Abuja, he came third. And Benue, he came third as well. So you look at his results, you would say that if things had been better for him here in the north central, the outcome would probably have been different.
In the entire north central state, Atiku didn't win any state there at all. If you remember driving from Kotonkafi all the way to Abaji, Abuja, after Abuja, you get to Nasarawa, Lafia, Aziz, and then maybe before you get to Lafia, you branch up to Plateau. And then if you go straight from Lafia, you're heading directly to Benue. After Benue, you hit either you go to Ebonyi, or you go to Otukpa and get back to Enugu. And then up of all of these, you have the Suleja Aziz in Niger State. This whole central area, apart from a few towns, had been enmeshed in crisis. Fulani herders crisis, farmer herders crisis, communal clashes, starting from Benue State. Then you have a kidnapping in Kogi, and then you've had the court clashes in Nasarawa, and up of Niger you have kidnapping and banditry. So a lot of people in this area also have seen one or two forms of APC, and also they departed from PDP. In 2019, they expected Atiku to make strong inroad and probably clean the seat, but that didn't happen. And then came Obi for Plateau. Okay, yes, Plateau also you've been having consistent clashes. Yeah, but then came Obi. You have a lot of people who also have this sentiment of we are minority in the north. So let's find a way to align with those minority in the south largely, and then see if we can get freedom from this crisis that we are consistently be having. And that's why, you find out the ruling party will have structures in these places, which is APC, like Nessie talked about, the Reverend Father in Benue, whose message consistently resonates with the people. And then in Plateau, you remember Peter Obi's campaign in Plateau was like that of Lagos. Consistently, he made a strong inroad there. The Suleja Aziz in Niger, that also you cannot rule out. And that's why it was difficult for Atiku to clinch Niger State. Kogi, you have a sitting governor of the APC who was part of the presidential campaign heading the youth team. So Abuja had always been, very liberal voters, considering the fact that most of the artisans and the, all other maybe everyday liberal workers would have gone to the north to exercise their franchise to vote. So you have just the sophisticated voters in Abuja and largely also the students. So that is why you are seeing a reflection of that vote between the ruling party that had something to give and then a Labour Party with a promissory note that resonates with the people. Atiku's message really didn't resonate around there. He preached about restructuring, which wasn't novel to most of these people there. Labour was more about, yes, let's take our country back. So people, the ordinary people, and mind you, this is a region where they feel a minority, also that message would naturally resonate with them.
Okay.
So that is why it was as if Atiku didn't make a strong show there, or didn't make a strong show. But quickly, let me take you back quickly, just few seconds. In Rivers, since 1999, there had been this argument about election in Rivers. I grew up partly in Port Harcourt, and people had been consistently saying, you remember 2015, Amechi was busy looking for results, that it is the man with the result that writes result sheet that writes a result. So there were allegations that there were manipulations in Rivers, but Wike also showed that he was able to hold his own and gave the vote to the APC. Let's see how that will pan out in the governorship election. That is where we can now truly say that it was, a Wike thing and not just a fluke.
Evans, let me come to you. We're looking at the Northeast geopolitical zone now. The Northeast geopolitical zone, the zone of Atiku Abubakar. Of course, you look at the results there. He did very well. Basically won almost all of the Northeast with the exception of Borno. He didn't win Borno State. What do you make of the outcome of the election there?
Yeah, Atiku has a huge influence in the Northeast. I remember I lived about 11 months in Yola. He has a lot of investment, and he invests heavily politically from that area. So his followership in that area is not in doubt, and the vote he garnered from that area is quite organic because of the followership. They believe in him so much, and he has contributed immensely to the development of that axis. He has a university in that axis, he has investment, he has companies, hotels, all across that axis. He invested so much in that. So it is expected that for one who has given so much in terms of employment in that area and development in that area, it's expected that politically, since the economy and politics are really close, it is expected that he will clinch, and that is exactly what turned out in that area. Except that his model of campaign was quite scary when he was talking about if he emerged as a president, how he's going to invite people and then they will sell national assets and all that. So it was his campaign mantra was disastrous. I didn't know why he didn't see that. That is probably the reason he didn't do very well in the North Central. And also, we remember that in the North Central, there's this kind of revolt. We want to pull out from the 19th state of the North kind of mantra. It has been going on silently. But well and good in his own area, he was able to pull that, and that is credit for him. He did his, what paid out for him there was his past antecedents. That is, if not, his political statements were not very, they were actually inimical to him clinching
Because of time now, because we have to move very fast. Dio, yes, it's true, Atiku actually won the northeast of the country. But then look at the performance of Bola Tinubu. Obi, of course, did not do well there, with the exception of Adamawa State, where I think he got, in Adamawa State, now let me see, what did he get in Adamawa State? So in Adamawa State, Peter Obi got 105,648 votes. And then Tinubu got 182,881 votes. Of course, Atiku Abubakar getting 417,611 votes. But Dai, I just want you to look at this. Yes, it's true, Atiku Abubakar did very well there, with the exception of Borno, that he did not win. But you look at what Tinubu was able to pull out of that zone. I mean, you look at the figures, you would say this is partly where he won the election.
Yes, this is where, even though he may not have won, but he came close enough, that critical 25% of 24 states that were required, these are the zones that gave him that headway that he needed, to the point that he actually even got 25% in 30 states, which was more than the constitutional requirement. This is because he paid attention to those states. Even though he knew he would have a difficult time winning because of the native son syndrome, Atiku is from that zone. There's also issues of insecurity, herdsman and farmer skirmishes that have led the people of the zone to really be sacked and be concerned about governance in their communities. So Bola Tinubu didn't take that place for granted. He didn't take that. He worked hard. You can look at what happened in Borno, for example. We know that Babagana Zulum is a Tinubu admirer and worked for him, but he was actually able to win that state for Bola Tinubu, and the other states came a very close second. So what that tells me is that Atiku Abubakar took that zone for granted, felt like, well, since I'm from there, it's automatic. I don't really have to apply myself.
But let's not also forget that the vice presidential candidate of the APC is also from that zone.
That could have very well helped the APC's numbers as well. In addition to all the efforts that they put into campaigning, there was also probably a little bit of, oh, the vice presidential candidate is our native son as well. So that probably canceled out Atiku's advantage of native son. Native son to native son, they canceled each other out in that respect.
Nelson, what do you think?
Well, I want to go with your submission that a strong factor that aided the votes that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu got in that zone could be traced to the fact that his running mate was from, that geopolitical zone. And also, don't forget, during the campaigns, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu worked very hard within that zone. He was meeting the key traditional rulers that, that could sway votes his way. And, from all indications from the results that we can see, it's like, he put in everything, knowing fully well that, that is a zone that his running mate comes from, and, ensuring that he gets a large chunk of the votes to, to be able to meet, the constitutional requirements. And, looking at that zone, it's like he got over 25% from every state within that geopolitical zone. So it tells you clearly that, that was one joker, that came his way.
Libros, very quickly, you look at Obi's performance there, with the exception of Adamawa State and Taraba State. He lost a lot of ground in the south, in the northeast.
You see, Adamawa State, you have a lot of Christians in Adamawa State who are consistently be complaining about being shortchanged as minority in the state. And what's his name? Babache Lawa is from that zone. And Taraba also is in the mode of Benue. Mind you, they have they are bordering Benue, and you also have a lot of Christians from Taraba. Remember the crisis between what's this late governor now and his running mate. So you would expect that Obi certainly will make a lot of inroad in those two states. But you also believe that one of the reasons why Bola Ahmed Tinubu chose a Muslim running mate was to appeal to the mass majority of the Muslims in these places who see one of theirs as, more, because also Atiku is from here, Atiku being a Muslim, certainly we have an advantage. And another key factor that played in the favor of APC against the Labour Party in that zone was the fact that, if you remember, there were times people were complaining that Tinubu was delegating powers to his running mate because he was ill. And so that gave the running mate the opportunity, the independence, to be able to assess his people and give them the assurance that I'm not going to be docile. I will be there and I will be a strong voice. So I will represent interest. So that made them put him in the mode also of an Atiku Abubakar becoming president. So they were also seeing him in that light. Apart from that, Taraba and Adamawa, the Christian folks you see there, who also will buy into the message of taking back Nigeria, that zone certainly was going to be a battleground, like we said in the last episode before this, was going to be a battleground between the two dominant political parties. And like we all agree, Atiku Abubakar certainly being a presidential candidate to a running mate who is also from Borno, definitely he will clinch it. And you saw that the margin was not that high I was not that wide. And but the APC were able to get the numbers that they required from there, and that also added to the vote bag and showed up, you know, the opportunities.
Absolutely. And you know, you look at it, the APC was only able to win one state there, and that's Borno State. But then you look at the results that the APC was able to pull out of that zone, quite massive. Now, I'll go to Evans so that we start by looking at the almighty Northwest geopolitical zone. Everybody had said this zone was going to determine the outcome of the presidential election, Evans. Do you think it turned out that way?
Well, it did, because when you look at it, the APC churned out a lot from that area. And when you look at the strategy that the APC deployed, it appears that even areas they did not get to win, they came either second or third. I mean, they did so much in those areas. So they even though there are complaints here and there that some of the results churning out from that region seems to be the same, with one state is having the same result with another state. That is for contest, that is for further contest, where perhaps when they get to the tribunal, or when they get to the court rather, they will be able to sort that out, because there have been a lot of complaints whether this mandate is a popular mandate, whether the election, the APC actually got this vote as a result of the people's will, whether or not there is the result they got was actually properly procured by the popular mandate of the people. Those are legitimate questions that will be subjected to litigation in the days to come. Okay. But it appears to me like their strategy actually turned out well. They had a widespread plan, not just to win a region, but to win as many as possible, and then to clinch reasonably in areas they could not outrightly win. They were able to clinch reasonably a huge percentage, which gave them the edge when you look at Section 134 of the Constitution, the second level of it, we talk about you getting that spread, 25% or 24 states. So that really gave them a move forward. And for me, for the proponent of that assertion that it determined the outcome, I think I agree with that postulation.
Okay. Dio.
Yes.
Look at the Northwest. The APC was only able to win 2 states in the Northwest, and that's Zamfara and Jigawa. Just Zamfara and Jigawa. The PDP won the remaining 4. Yes, the remaining 4 states there, and the PDP actually did very well in the Northwest. But look at what the APC was able to get, even in those states that it lost. In Sokoto, it got 285 to the PDP's 288. In Kebbi, 248 to the PDP's 285. You look at the margin of victory for the PDP there. You know, the margin, the difference in the votes of the APC and the PDP, not so wide. In Katsina, of course, the APC lost Katsina, but it was able to get 482,283 to the PDP's 489,045. So you look at the way they were running neck and neck in that zone. How important was that for the APC winning this election?
Without a doubt, the APC was just a heartbeat away from actually taking many of those states away from the PDP. And it again speaks to what we've been talking about all evening, which is the fact that the APC candidate really applied himself. This particular region has been one that there's been a lot of focus on because it contains what is euphemistically referred to as the Kardashian states. That is Kano, Kaduna, and Katsina. Those 3 states have the power to shift trends. So if all along the trend had been going one particular direction in the past, by the time those 3 states come in, it can shift the entire dynamic and momentum of the election, because they've always had that groundswell of population, groundswell of registered voters, and also huge turnouts. They've always recorded great percentages of turnout in elections, which shows that people are politically conscious and actually interested. Now, for APC to have come within a hair's breadth of catching the PDP in that zone, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that first of all, the PDP was obviously quite complacent, and the APC didn't take anything for granted and put its nose to the grindstone continuously and continued to campaign, continued to talk to the traditional leaders, the clerics, the leaders of thought, the elders, all the people who would make a difference and who could influence the way people thought and the way they would vote. Of course, there are socio-economic factors that were involved as well. I personally believe the cash crunch must have had a major impact on this election, but notwithstanding the fact that this administration was wholly responsible for both the cash crunch and the fuel crisis, at least they were the ones governing when these things happened. It seems like Bola Tinubu was able to overcome whatever negative feelings or ill will that anybody may have felt towards the administration based on those particular socio-economic challenges. Now, having said that, I think this zone in particular was very key to the APC getting its 25%. So it looks like the North was pivotal to this victory, and we can't take anything away from the APC in its achievement.
Absolutely. Nelson, what do you think? I mean, Peter Obi, of course, was able to do well in Kaduna State, but other than that, he did very poorly in the Northwest.
Yes, I want to start from where I want to start from the concluding part of Dayo's intervention, and it's with regards to the fact that the socio-economic reality must have, impacted negatively on this on the turnout in this election. Because if you recollect, in 2015 and 2019, the KK states were producing over 1 million votes for the APC. But looking at this election, you can see that the votes they have is a far cry from what they used to have. And you look at the effect of the votes that the APC gathered in Sokoto. One was shocked by that outcome in Sokoto and Zamfara. It shows clearly that roles of key northern leaders like Alhaji Aliyu Wamako must have played a crucial part. Then talking about Kaduna, why the LP was able to put up a strong showing in Kaduna, you cannot divorce it from the southern Kaduna, the religious factor, and the fight they have had, all through his 8 years with the outgoing governor, as well as the farmers' header clashes, the communal clashes, and what have you. By and large, one major factor you can't take away from here is that, the APC's candidature, resonated with the people of the Northwest majorly. Don't forget that the APC had Bola Ahmed Tinubu and a Kashim Shettima. But in those areas of that region where you have, where you all expect that, they have a big population of Muslims, and, they have always had this cries of being marginalized. That is why you see the LP, shooting out its head in Kaduna State.
Yeah.
One thing I want to allude to quickly is that the Beavers may have been a game changer here, because just as Nelson said, in the past, we've seen great population spurts in terms of elections, which in this particular case, the numbers were down. So it's quite possible that the technology that was introduced has made a difference in terms of weeding out ghost voters and ineligible voters and illegal votes. So maybe technology played a role that kept the numbers down.
And even underage voters.
Yes, and underage voters as well, and helped it to be a better reflection of reality.
Quickly, DG, if you look at Kano, for example, you see that the NNPP candidate had close to 1 million votes.
1 million votes.
So that tells you clearly that, the...
And the APC getting 570,000.
Yes, it tells you clearly that the population is still there. But, unlike in the past where the APC, I think in 2015 and 2019, were getting about 1.5 or 7 million votes, for Kano, Kaduna, and Katsina. But this time around, we have seen them come low, and it cannot be divorced from the socio-economic reality. That is strongly my opinion.
I mean, well, the socioeconomic realities would definitely be one of the reasons, but no question at all that the beavers too could have played a role. Libros, let me quickly ask you, do you think Kwankwaso was actually running to make a point? Because with the exception of Kano, he didn't win anywhere.
Kwankwaso was not a contender in the election outside of Kano. All the while, I think he was pretending. Even his running mate, my friend and brother, Pastor
Idahosa,
was hardly seen anywhere apart from Kwankwaso. It was Kwankwaso's influence that, and so the Kwankwasia movement has a very strong influence in Kano and around neighboring communities. And so outside of that, it was also certain that Kwankwaso was not going to have. And so that's why when I talked about the race, I've never really mentioned a 4-horse race. For me, it's been a 3-horse race all the while. So Kwankwaso was, outside of Kano, was not a contender. But that said, I also would align with Dayo. I have given INEC knock, but at this rate, I also identify in giving them kudos for the beavers for verification, the first leg of beaver. And that truly is a reflection of what we are seeing in numbers. Mind you, this is one of the 2 zones that have 7 states. Apart from the North Central, this state also has 7 states, while others have 6 states, and then in Southeast have only 5. So here was a battleground because certainly the Kaduna is the traditional headquarters of the northern region, commercial political headquarters of the northern region. Kano was the commercial nerve center, or is the commercial nerve center of the northern region. And people from these areas, apart from those from southern Kaduna, people from this area, largely, religion is their culture. Unlike in the West, where religion is different from our cultural practice. So the influence of having a Muslim candidate as a running mate certainly played out here also. And that is why before the election, you also saw people like Professor Anglo Abdullahi coming out to say, one of the members of the Northern Elders Forum, saying that it is still the turn of the North to rule. So they were not going to leave that for anything. In Kano, before now, you had Kwankwaso, Shekarau, Ganduje, all of them together in one fold. But now they are all in different folds. That certainly also played out in the way the numbers went in Kano. So in Kaduna, we agreed that the sentiment of the southern Kaduna, just like the religion in the entire zone played out, the sentiment of a minority group and religious sentiment in southern Kaduna played out, coupled with the Muslim ticket. We're not looking at it because the PDP swept the entire senatorial zone in the whole of Kaduna. In 2019, El-Rufai chose a Muslim running mate. And so you have a Muslim deputy governor in that state. That also is a factor that a lot of people also consider. It is not just the economic influence. There was a large turnout of voters in this region, but the verification of the bimodal verification system reduced the numbers of people that are able to vote. Unlike, remember, Kasim Shettima, during the campaign, in one of those interviews, said that the numbers of voters from Borno, for example, will double the number of voters from 2 states in the south. But now, you're seeing that the number of voters that came from Borno is even less than the number of voters that came from Enugu State. If you put them together, not really less, but almost at par. So Kadri, that played a very pivotal role.
Beavers, you mean?
Beavers played a very pivotal role. And another thing that played a pivotal role is the Muslim ticket of the APC. Like I said, why the traditional voter from this region will see Atiku Abubakar as their own, a northerner who also is a Muslim. Also, the projection that the APC was able to give their running mate, Shettima, also played a key role in this space. Mind you, there were some sentiments expressed like the sentiment expressed during Buhari's campaign, that the presidential candidate of the APC was old in the South, that he was old. That means you're going to give the vote to Shettima, that he might eventually end up ruling. You know, God forbid. So that also will play a positive role in the mind of those in the North, that if it happens, God forbid, that means it's a beneficiary, there will be beneficiary for it.
And very quickly, because you talked about religion, and religion played, religion was like, it played two roles for Peter Obi, whereas religion helped him to win in Kaduna, I mean, get this number of votes in Kaduna. Religion also affected his chances across the other states. I mean, you can see that he did very poorly in the other states in the zone. So, whereas religion helped him to win here, that's the Christian votes, but the Muslim majority in the other states, of course, didn't want him.
Yes, truly, DEJI. You see, that is why I said this Muslim ticket that people voted against in the South, people voted for it in the North. Because for them, you know, religion and their culture are one and the same thing. So for those in the South, for the voters in the South, to them it was a no-no. So it was like voting entirely for one religion. So, and that's why you saw a lot of them also. Most people of them visited churches. You know, I hardly saw him in the mosque. You know, he visited churches also. You know, most of the mega churches also vociferously campaigned for him. So in this, in the entire areas where you have Christians in the North, you saw him show up vote there. And in areas where you have Muslims in the North, Atiku Abubakar and the APC candidate share their vote in those places because of the influence of the religion factor also in these places.
Yeah.
Labour Party vice presidential candidate is a Muslim from this region. How come he was unable to garner votes from his region, unlike the vice presidential candidate of the APC?
Maybe it's because he's also not a political heavyweight anyway.
Absolutely, that's what he tells us.
Yeah, that's what it tells us. But just before we wrap up, gentlemen, let me ask you this final question, and I want you to be very brief. Because we just have to wrap up. Time is fast spent. Dayo, you look at these four candidates. You know, the three of them, Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, and Rabiu Kwankwaso, used to be in the PDP, at least before the primaries. Before the primaries, they were all in the PDP. But then after the primaries, they went their separate ways. I'm just wondering, what do you think could have been the outcome of this election if the three of them had been together? Because the impression I get is that, look, even though there were four political parties as front runners here, it was essentially like the APC contesting against the PDP, but the PDP deciding to sort of split their vote. Now, what do you think, could the outcome have been different if, for instance, the PDP went into this election as one, and there was no LP and no NNPP?
Well, that's a catch-22 question, because if you think that perhaps there was no LP, the youth and all the others who became the obedient movement might not have been galvanized or activated and looking at the PDP as business as usual. So if Obi had stayed in the PDP, there's no telling if he could have aroused the kind of passions that he did while he's in an old existing party. However, the way I look at it is, in 2015, the APC unseated an incumbent. How did they do it? They did it by virtue of splinter groups coming together. They did what was an agglomeration.
Yes, coming together.
Yes,
but in this case, there was
yes, there was the ACN,
there was no coming together.
There was the CPC of Buhari, there was the new PDP. They all came together. In this, and they won. They unseated an incumbent. In this case, what has happened is there's been a separation. So I asked myself, how is it possible that it took a coming together to win, and you cannot assume that a separation will have any hope? And it shows in the numbers as well that they splintered up the PDP group into three separate places that, if had been unified into one homogeneous bloc, might have prevailed in this election.
Nelson, your own take?
Well, my own take is that, you cannot, really place your fingers on it that it could have panned out this way. It could have also gone some other ways. Some persons that, cast their vote for maybe the NNPP or the LP at this time around might have, decided that, I would rather prefer I go with the APC. But, one fact, stands out and, one can, hazard a guess, and that is that it was very likely that if you combine the votes of these three splinter groups from the PDP, if they had, run against the APC, they might have carried the day. But I want to, disagree with my brother here, Dayo, who said the LP has never been a new party. The LP has always run along with the APC, only that the LP has been unable, to get its footing on ground, unlike now. But they had pockets of, their feet in the ground during the days where we had Olusegun Mimiko as governor of Ondo State, who won back-to-back as governor under the ticket of the LP. So, looking at this, like we always say, such scenarios are not something you can, just predict, looking at it on the surface. There are so many undercurrents, that, play
I understand you. I mean, we're just talking anyway. Libros, I'll take the final word from you now. What do you think could have happened? What might have been if these three men had been together as one?
Yeah, DEJI, I will quickly also say that you remember there was a surge in the number of registered voters the moment Obi came into the race. So, and people could resonate with his message, even though he was in PDP all of the while. People felt, look, he was like a born again from the PDP. So to have a large number that joined the fray, you also have people who said if Obi was not in the race, probably they would have gone for either Atiku or they would have gone for Tinubu. But the fact that Obi was in the race and he was younger than the both of them, and it was a departure from the two parties that they had both tested, that it was a good landing. Also, you have a lot of people from the Southeast that probably, would have pinched their tent with the PDP, their traditional base. So I would give it to that if Obi had remained in PDP, for example, those votes coming from the Southeast would that naturally have gone to the PDP. That is a given. And then the Kwankwaso, if Kwankwaso had remained in PDP, it is also certain that the vote of Kwankwaso would traditionally have gone, to PDP. And then the last factor is the G5 factor. Because you talked about these three groups, actually four groups. The G5 factor, Wike being a strong financier of the PDP, even before the emergence of Atiku, that also is a key factor. And the strong battle, look at Oyo, for example. So if they had worked together, there is no way. It would have been very difficult for the APC. Let's even assume that the process was rigged. It would have been difficult to outrig them.
Quickly, liberals told us that the Northwest religion is a key factor there. If Obi had remained in the PDP and he had become their vice presidential candidate, then they would have been running against an APC that had a Muslim candidate. And if we go by liberals' submission, then there was no way you could have had a Muslim Christian ticket, getting votes that ordinarily would have come to the Muslims. So it means that clearly, from his submission, the APC would have swept the day.
That would depend on what the voters will be looking at. If the voters in the northern region would not consider the president more important. Anyway, these are just scenarios anyway, but the truth is it didn't play out that way, and we can now see how the election has turned out. I understand Evans Ufeli is back with us again. Evans, let me get a final word from you. What's your take? What do you think could have happened if these three men, Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, and Rabiu Kwankwaso, if they had been together in the PDP? They were together in the PDP, but then before the election, they went their separate ways.
Well, you know, we have a precedent of how APC sat PDP in 2015. That strategy, PDP will need to adopt that strategy in the future to come back to mainstream. Because PDP believe they are big enough that they can disintegrate at any point in time and then still clinch the presidency, but it's working against them. First, they had too many underlying crises, even before the build-up to the election, before the Wike own was concocted, when they all had an agreement and then turned the agreement on its head, sat on it and scattered and dismembered everything. Now, you see these pockets of crisis they have had, unresolved, contributed also to the fact that they have been in the helm of affairs for so long, tried, tested, and they failed too. So perhaps in the future, PDP should be looking at how they can merge, no matter how organic they have been from inception. They must form alliances in the future to click it. For what has happened, it's clear that Labour Party, what they call Labour today, is the acculturation. Though the party have existed before, pre-existed before now, but it became of flesh and blood when P2B moved to that point. And the kind of communication he has had with the grassroots, with the ordinary people on the streets also contributed massively to what the party have become today. And so if all other parties, if they had allowed him to contest in PDP, rally around it and then make a positive remark and then make their primaries a little bit clean so that the emergence at that level will not throw up a lot of dust and bad blood.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming on the program. This has been a very deep and incisive analysis. Dayo Akintobi, who is a political affairs analyst, thank you so very much for your time and thank you for your insights. And Nelson Ekujimi,
thank you very much for having me.
Thanks a lot. Libros Oshoma, thank you so very much. And thank you for joining us. We'll wait and see what happens next. The president-elect, of course, will be sworn in on the 29th of May. So between now and then, he would have to set up his transitional council now? I believe he would use this period now to set up that team. But on the 29th of May, of course, he'll be sworn in and then would effectively have a new president. And that president, of course, would be Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Well, that's how much we can take on the show this day. We thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.